Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. Today, I'm very excited to introduce you to Ogo Ade. Ogo, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Listen, this is going to be a really interesting one. You are a self-development coach doing a lot of work within the fund management space at the moment. You've got an incredible background that I've had the great fortune to find out a little bit about so far. And there's so many things that we've been talking about that got me really excited about helping people attain their absolute best. It's something we talk about as a mantra through the business. Harrington Starr's strapline is "Your Success, Our Business." The whole thing there is about making people more successful. I know that's something you're devoting your being to at the moment, helping people play at their absolute best. We're going to unpack all of that and a hell of a lot more very, very soon. But before we get into it all, tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing at the moment, who you're helping, how you're helping them.
Okay, where do I start? Grew up in London, former athlete. I used to play basketball all the way up from primary school, secondary school. And then I got a scholarship eventually to finish off secondary school in the States, in Las Vegas. And then I went on to college, went to university in New York, St. Bonaventure. And then I started playing my professional basketball career in Europe. Played for 10 years. And while I was playing, I started learning about investments. And, I thought it was all about the numbers. And I thought it was, what most people put online about it. So I followed that path, and I realized that just like basketball, it's not always what you see. It's more than meets the eye. So, I started doing a little bit more digging, and, eventually I met my mentor, who showed me a lot about the psychology part of it. And funny enough, that's what I studied at school. So, long story short, I started, trading, and I realized that in order to be good at this thing, I had to focus more on my psychology than I did about strategy, or, it was more about me, about who I was and what I see, because I understood that how I felt, who I was, it kind of influenced my perception. Yeah. And that perception influences the decision making. So it just changed my whole trajectory, my whole belief system in improving. And now it's all about psychology for me. So now that's what I do. I help traders, I help investors, I help fund managers be at their best by focusing on themselves, by developing themselves.
I think this is really interesting, right? Because I think for so long, that sort of development has almost been overlooked, because people want to be the best. People want to, in a very sort of alpha industry by nature, right. People there as traders who don't want to show weakness, and sometimes that weakness can say, look, I'm the top of the game, I'm there, I'm a winner. To look for that sort of psychological edge and self-improvement is almost to admit that you need to improve, and that's something which is quite interesting about how people block that sort of thing out. Yeah. And I think this whole movement that we've seen a lot more about mindfulness and well-being, and people thinking about how they can perform and play at their best has been overlooked. Look, the role of psychology in the buy side and hedge fund space and fund management has probably been shot to the fore by Billions recently, where it where it sort of came right. on TV to see a bespoke role in a company based around the psychological mindset. And I think it's becoming more and more accepted that there are real advantages to come through in a world where trading technology that we live in, that we sit and look at, and people are talking about the advantages that have been got through tech. The actual, to marry that science with the art of performance, I think is a really, really interesting thing. So when you're talking to people and you're there and you're talking about, without wishing to be too typecast about this, fairly ego-led people who are wanting to be, sat there at the top of their tree, what's the appetite for people to be looking at, and what sort of barriers are you having to overcome to help people play at their best?
Okay, so I'm going to start, with the markets. The market doesn't care about your ego. It doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care what you've done. It just moves. It's like literally like a wave. It's literally like, the ocean. And being ego-led means that your perception is tainted. It means that you're not seeing objectively. And when you're dealing with uncertainty, objectivity is the key, because, some of your good decisions might end up bad, and some of your bad decisions might end up well. And if you're only ego-led, you're only going to be looking at your wins. You're not going to be learning the right lessons, even from the good decisions that turned out unfavorably. People who haven't really had the same kind of ego that I would have had, in the sports world yet. But, the first thing people come to realize is that there's more that meets the eye when it comes to perception, because me and you can look at the same charts and see totally different things. I can see all the reasons to buy, and you see all the reasons to sell, and we could both be right. And we could also both be wrong, depending on the timing. So I think, again, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. We project as human beings. And, we have a ton of examples of that with all psychological terms like confirmation bias, or like if you've ever bought something before that you thought nobody else has, or maybe you bought a new car and I've never seen this color. As soon as you buy it, you see it everywhere. Those are things that they pan out in our day-to-day lives. And that's because we take ourselves with us. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but it's the truth. We project in everything that we do. So when it comes to the markets, we also project. Like if you think about our strategy, when this does this, then that means buy. You're going to see that everywhere. But that doesn't mean it's a good play. That doesn't mean it's a good decision. I think the fine line is really getting to know yourself and getting to know when you're being objective or when you're just basically just chasing or seeing what you want to see.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, isn't it? There's a lot of decisions that we make to chase something, where we're chasing things. You're chasing a goal, you're chasing a result.
Right.
One of my favourite books of all time was by Bill Walsh, called The Score Takes Care of Itself, the San Francisco coach, legendary San Francisco football coach. In that, the whole thing was the whole process of that book was about take care of the process, don't worry about the result. His first season was exactly the same losing season as the one before, but there's improvement in every single game. And I think in performance environments, be it sports or trading and business, quite often the focus is incredibly tight on that result. So people make decisions which then do that, which then loses focus. And when you're losing focus, you're making panic-based decisions. When that focus gets lost, you start to lose confidence in your decision making. When you lose confidence in your decision making, ultimately that impacts your motivation to do it further, and it gets your outcome gets further away. Your motivation gets further this way, and all of a sudden you're in a spiral of devastation that's very difficult to get out of it. So when people are sat there and they're looking at this and they are in that battle with themselves and that putting, I guess, pressure, self-induced pressure, not realistic pressure on themselves to perform, because pressure is effectively a mirage at the same sort of time. These things I think are really fascinating. I'm fascinated to find out from you, having obviously looked at this from a sporting perspective, how translatable it is, because there will be people who sat there. I'm a big believer in the lessons from sport to business, but I've also spoken to a lot of people who don't see it in the same way. They say, look, it's a different thing. It's different, but to me, there's obvious parallels between each one. They're looking to win a game. They're not looking for, we can't set the score. It's not an end of season and a new season every single time. There's all those sort of things coming through. Tell me how you successfully translate the lessons you've gained from a career in sport at a very high level and are able to translate them to a completely different industry.
First of all, I think everything is translatable. I mean, I think because we're all connected and we live in a global society, everything, it just depends on how you package it and how it's remolded. With sports, it's all about psychology. If you look at a player in the NBA or a soccer player, if you just looked at him and met him somewhere, he would look like any other guy. You wouldn't know the skills he had. You wouldn't know if he can drive a helicopter. You wouldn't know if he could fly a plane. It's literally his wiring in his brain. So now, of course, with basketball players, some of them are 6'10", but then again, some of them are 5'9".
Yeah.
There's been many short basketball players, but the difference has been their mindset. The difference between, someone like Mark Zuckerberg or, just a regular guy, it's their mindset. So athletes are put in arenas where they're naked. They can't hide. Everybody sees your stats. Everybody sees everything you're doing. You're scrutinized, and they're put in such a position where if you don't perform, we will know. And we will get to see your face, your reaction, everything. I mean, for an athlete, it's not just the game, it's even the press conference, it's everything. Being in that kind of situation, you have to learn almost on the fly from a very young age how to handle pressure. You have to learn how to handle loss. You have to learn how to handle heartbreak. I feel like with athletes, I'm going to say we because I still feel like I'm still an athlete.
Yeah. Always once an athlete, always an athlete.
Right. So I feel like with athletes, like it's not what we do, it's who we are.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with our self-worth. Switching from being an athlete to, now being a fund manager, I had to go through this, and I still am, through this transition where I needed help, like professional help, because I had to separate what I was doing or what I do from who I am. And that is not something that comes easy, because that's something that I've had since I was a kid, since before my brain was fully developed. Basketball or sports was always a part of me. So now that I'm an adult, when my brain is fully developed, my brain still associates my worth with what I did. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so understanding that on a fundamental level, this is almost like second nature for me. Handling pressure, bouncing back, it's part of life. It's not like it's not an option. It is life. There's a saying called "ball is life," and this is pretty much what it depicts. Because so now when you take it from sports to the fintech world, athletes have that natural inclination to, okay, I'm going to bounce back. Okay, I'm going to find a way. Okay, I'm not going to let this, I messed up, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find out how to make things right or how to bounce back. And that's not something that comes easy to everyone. To us who are raised in this space, it's almost like, oh yeah, you bounce back. You lost 5 in a row. Okay, you go for the 6th one. But that doesn't come natural to everyone. Or you miss 10 shots in a row. Oh, okay.
But it doesn't come natural to a lot of athletes as well, right? So there's an elite level athlete, and then you can also see people who, the very nature of sport. You hear the word confidence players, right?
Right.
You hear people there who get the yips. Yes. I saw Steph the other day had missed the most 3-pointers that he's missed in his life in a game. But I've also seen him this season hitting ridiculous shots to I mean, it's the fastest ever to 1,000 points worth of 3-pointers, right? It's astonishing numbers. That's a guy who knows as soon as the ball's left his hands that it's going to go through the net. And there are others there who will sit there. I was out in New York and watched the Knicks the other day, and it astonished me that people couldn't throw the penalty point shots. They're sat there, and it's missing for people who would do that in their sleep.
Right.
99 times out of 100 stages. But I looked at the stats and they were astonishing. It was probably 68% or something like that of those shots that were going, and you were thinking, surely these people who do this all the time can do it. But it's not. It's 20,000 people in a room. It's not cutting out the noise. It's all of the people waving and shouting and hitting their things behind it. Yeah. But there are people there who will miss and then panic and be thinking about their last miss rather than thinking about their next shot. Yeah. What's the difference between performers, and we'll take this back to the trading world, people who take a loss and chase the loss, right, and say, I've got to win again, I've got to make a trade now that makes money because I've just lost money on it, and the others who are there and saying it's entrenched in my psyche to recognize that this is all about the process, this is all about making the right decision next time, right, and the decision I made before doesn't impact the decision I made today. Right. This is the same. So if I take it into my world, I have salespeople there who I think are at their worst in 2 different times. One of which is when they've had a bad month and they think, right, I'm going to fix it this month and go, and they try and run at it and they don't try and fix it. They just try and do more chaotically to do it. Or one where they've just had their best month and they get complacent around what they're doing. I think it's the same in any sales industry. I think it's the same in any trading space. I think it's the same in sport. When you've got people there who are looking at the outcome and measuring their self-esteem based on the outcome rather than the process, you have this piece come into it. There are people there who really work hard at that, who I think then become the elite performers. Right. And there are people there who are mavericks, who go up and down all the way through this, who just who get into that panic mode around it. Right. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that, because I know that's something we've spoken about in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think you asked what's the the difference between those 2 kind of people. It's really, I mean, experience plays a huge part in it, because rookies coming to the NBA have no idea what they're about to face, and people approaching the markets have no idea what they're about to face. You know, everybody who starts, I mean, I wouldn't say everybody, but most people that I know, once they start trading or when they start with the markets, they win everything. Everything's a win. So they put some real money in there and they realize this is the big league. This is the
NBA. Means something.
Yeah. People who are on, like, who are playing, you know, playing in the markets, they're playing the elite level of it. The elite, this is the NBA of the markets. Every time you approach in the markets, because you're going against banks, you're going against hedge funds, you're going against billionaires, you know, you're not going against little boys. So the way you approach it has to be accordingly. You know, you have to approach it in that same way where, you know, you're going to sleep on time. You're holding yourself to account. One of the things that I also help my clients with is almost like it's called an accountability chart, where you're almost accounting for how you felt before you made that decision, how you felt after you made the decision, regardless of the outcome. Being able to self-regulate is so huge, because your outcomes are not always going to be reflective of your decisions. We spoke before about resulting. You know, resulting is when you base the quality of a decision solely on the outcome. But we know that good decisions can turn out bad, and bad decisions can turn out good. But resulting gives us, you know, when we're looking back with experience, it makes it seem like decisions equals outcome. You know, every good decision you make turned out well. If I was to ask you right now, what was your best decision? You'll probably tell me your best outcome. If I was to ask you what your worst decision, you tell me your worst outcome. You know, you wouldn't tell me, you know, the process in it, and you wouldn't tell me about luck, you know, because nobody can control luck. Nobody has a monopoly on luck. So when you're looking at outcomes are decisions plus luck, you know. And the thing about it is, if we're going to work at the elite level, we have to learn how to almost do everything we can and roll the dice with luck. But then when we're looking back after the outcome, regardless if it's a good or bad outcome, because sometimes we make good decisions and we have a good outcome, and then we don't need to, you know, assess what we could have done better, you know. But at the next level, even good outcomes, we have to look, okay, where could I have done better? Where did I mess up? Get away.
Let's take this in the context of a trader,
okay,
who has a run of bad results.
Okay.
And the pressure on that trader then comes through because there's significant loss being accrued by those results.
I've been there.
But you look at it and you say, yeah, everyone has. But you look at it and you say at the same time, right, okay, the process was perfect all the way through, and there is force majeure that's involved in that. I can look at it in my team, in the business. There are people there who do exactly the right. And actually, I'll give you an example specifically of someone in this business at the moment. For years, he's always been a good performer, very, very, very good performer. And at stages within it, he'll go through 2 or 3 stages of a year where he then ends up chasing it because a couple of things have gone wrong and he hasn't got the deals he wanted to do, he hasn't made the placements he wanted to do, all those sort of things. And then he gets back into a rhythm once he's got the confidence of a deal that comes back into it. This year, he's gone to another level. And the principal thing that he's done is every time he's had that small part of panic, he's looked at the process, he's explored what he's done, he's checked his stats have given him confidence in the result. And the results column has said minimal, but what he knows is that he's done enough to give him a lot. And that gives him the confidence then to say, right, I've been there in that story. I know where I'm at. I'm going to be cool. Something I talk about, everyone be cool when they're dealing with it. And then the results tend to take care of themselves there afterwards as well. Yeah. But I know that there's a lot of people who really struggle with that. I know there's a lot of people, and particularly when the stakes are high and the pressures are on, and you have a management team in a lot of environments who don't look at the context, they look at the result. They look at that top line. How do people deal with that and not get pressure? And how can they manage that? And how can they perform? And how does it help them perform?
This goes back to what we just talked about with athletes. You know, athletes, I'm going to use Europe, because Europe is, I don't know if you know anything about professional sports and athletes, it's cutthroat. You sign a deal today, they might send you home next week.
Yeah.
If you don't perform, yeah, it's very, very cutthroat. In that kind of environment where I've seen guys, I've been on a team where they changed 10 players in the span of a couple months because they weren't performing. When you see that kind of stuff going around, it's all about doing what you can do, like literally self-awareness. Because so many times, as we said before, we always think we're doing our best. We always look at ourselves in the best way. unless you have really low self-esteem. But we're talking elite people. We're always looking at all decisions. Everything we do is gold. You know, we got the Midas touch.
Yeah.
Self-awareness brings it down to an objective level. And sometimes you need external help to show that. You know, sometimes you need an online analytical tool, you know, because there was one of my early class before I started my business. He told me, yeah, I'm doing really, really well. Every trade is 5%, 10%. And I was like, okay, but have you connected it to this analytical tool? He said, no. So let me do it. And then he got back to me. He was like, yo, I'm struggling. And I was like, yeah, because he wasn't looking at he wasn't, you know, zooming out to look at the bird's eye view. He was just looking at the last couple of weeks or the last month. So I'm saying that to say, you know, I think self-awareness is huge. You know, self-development, being able to be objective and honest with yourself. It's very, very difficult. And again, sometimes you need external help. You need maybe a close friend to look you in your face and tell you you're messing around. I didn't want to curse right there, but you know, you have a close friend who tells you, you know what, like you need to relax. You need to humble yourself, you know, or you need, again, an analytical tool that shows you, you know, that projects, okay, you've done well, this, and that, but if you continue down this road, you're going to get caught. That's, you know, really like taking, because human beings are so complex. We have so many different personalities and so many different versions of ourselves that me as a trader is not me as a friend. You know, me as a friend is not me as a basketball player. Because I'm a basketball player, I'll tell you right now, I was an a-hole. I wasn't a guy, you know, opponents really liked, you know, but me as a friend or as a brother, I'm different. Understanding who you are in the context of what you do is huge. It's huge in those kind of situations, because if you're in a slump, or even if you're on a run, the next level, or the elite level, is about always being in that middle place where the outcomes don't shift you too far left or too far right. You know, your slumps don't shift you from I'm worthless. You know, because when people lose trades, they feel like they have like their self-esteem crashes with the trade.
Absolutely, it's attached to it, right? And this is something that fascinates me all the time about people. It is how they tie you know, themselves and their whole self-worth around their performance, around some of these things. They're still the same person. There's a wonderful LinkedIn picture that pops up every now and then on social media, which is two people on the same bus going in the same direction. One of them's looking at the rock face and got that glum face in them, and the other one's looking out over a beautiful horizon and smiling. And to me, it's like everyone has the choice. I say this all the time. Everyone has the choice to look out either of those windows.
Same bus.
It is a choice which they make. It's the same bus and the same journey and the same choice about which way you look. Right. And I think helping people to recognise that looking out of the right window is a choice. It doesn't mean don't worry about the result. It doesn't mean that the result is insignificant, because it always is. But if you can put yourself consistently in the place, this is my view, if you can put yourself consistently in the place to perform, then you know that if you are outworking the situation and you're doing the right sort of things and you're constantly looking to develop and improve and pick that sort of the stuff up, then success is inevitable.
Right.
And I think having people like you working with performers, be it in sports, sport to me is miles ahead of this in terms of it, because there are, and again in sport, I know I've spoken to a number of high performers, elite level performers, international performers in all sorts of sports. There'll be people there who love it, and there'll be people there who don't need it or think they need it at various different stages. But the ones who I think are really engaging with this and saying, how can I be the best I can possibly be and be the best version of myself, are the ones who are sat there and they're saying, let's look at this and let's recognize the fact that my mind is going to be the bit that controls my performance more than any other area of my life. Right. And I think those athletes who've looked at that, and sports teams who've looked at that and said, this is a trading advantage for us, this is the difference, this is one of those percenters. You know how much Dave Brailsford and Team Sky put into all of this sort of thing, in particular with the chimp paradox and everything around those sort of things. And I find it fascinating that businesses look at the same sort of thing and spend a lot more time on the technical basis of the work than they do on the mindset. And when you've got performers who are potentially invested for millions and millions of pounds in your business, and you aren't working on helping them play at their best, it's staggering. Right. So tell me about that in your process. Tell me about some of the sort of objections that you have to overcome. Tell me about some of the things and how you actually persuade people to say, look, working with me, work with the best fund managers in the space, the best performers in the space, is going to help them move up to another level. And why don't people do it? Why isn't everyone doing that?
I wanted to add to your other point before. You know how a lot of guys, when they lose, they feel bad. The emotions take a hit, but they don't consult those same emotions prior to their decisions. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
That is literally a part of, for me, how I coach it. That's a part of risk management, because risk management is not just the money, like, or the percentage you're risking, but it's also emotional. I don't know if you know Denise Shaw. She talks about emotional capital, and it's literally that. It's like, that's another way of self-governing, because in those times where you're in a slump or on a run, you consult with your emotions and you ask yourself, or you consult with your future self, so to speak. How am I going to feel if I take this trade, knowing full well I just lost 5 in a row doing the same thing? You consult with yourself, and that can alter or shift certain decisions, which can make a huge difference when you're compounding the whole thing.
Or leads to procrastination as well, doesn't it?
Exactly. So sorry, go back to your the future.
So it's my fault for veering off there as well. The thing I was talking about is look, there's a clear correlation for me about how this works and how it can give people the opportunity to improve and be better. I know that actually investing in this from any business is a sort of concern where people are thinking, right, I'm happy to invest in a CRM system, I'm happy to invest in an HR system, I'm happy to do all these different things. But then when it comes to investing in people through coaching, in not the technical side, but the mind, is such an afterthought when people are so important to the success of any business, to get them playing at their best. Tell me about the objections that you come up against, and tell me a little bit about how you persuade people that spending a bit of time with Ogo is going to help their teams, their businesses, their companies grow to new levels.
I just started, so I just started as a business, a few months ago. But the objections would probably be, if this person can't do it, we'll get somebody else. I can see businesses or people feeling like, if
expendable people,
right, because we'll just replace them, because that's how it is in the sports world. If he doesn't do it, we'll get a better player, But the thing is, even if you do get a better player, you might not get the best out of that player, and that's the thing. You might just get somebody who maybe copes with the pressure a little bit, or you don't really fully maximize that person's potential, and that's where, me helping a trader or me helping people individually comes to play when you're talking about a bunch of people. Because if a bunch of people are self-aware, that creates a culture, creates a culture of almost compassion and empathy, because nobody's resulting. Everybody's looking at results differently. Everything is because if it's just naturally, it's just like, oh yeah, he sucks. Oh yeah, he played good, But if it's a culture of like, let's not be quick, because we've been there before and we know that we made good decisions, and what I'm saying, it creates a culture. Having a coach in those kind of settings, it creates a culture or an environment or an ecosystem where everybody wants everybody else to win. And that is conducive for success all around. What I'm saying? So on an individual basis, it helps you in terms of your self-worth or your emotional balance. So I just made that word up.
I quite like it. It works. We'll trademark that now. There's the name of the book.
But it also helps not just the individual, but if you're talking about a business, now you're talking about an army of people who are compassionate towards each other, towards each other's results, towards their own results, and a business leader or business director who has an army of people who they're literally striving to be their better self, and that absolutely spills into their work. It absolutely does. There's every evidence from science or from history, it shows that better people work better.
There's that classic mantra of the All Blacks, isn't there? The rugby team saying, better people make better All Blacks. That's their mantra.
I didn't even know that.
There you go. You can keep that one. That's my gift from today. Listen, I love this, and it's a subject which I talk about for hours and hours and hours. And I told you how quickly half an hour ago when we started kicking off this, and we've moved through a prompt. There's going to be follow-ups to this. I'd love to have you back on the show to follow up and tackle different areas of it, because it is a topic I am hugely passionate about. And I know so many of the people who watch and listen to this show also are watching it to be better. How better to do that than someone who's taken the lessons from it. I spoke about one of my favourite books I've read this year to you earlier on about Chris Bosch,
Yes.
Lessons to a Young Athlete. And those lessons to me are utterly translatable into any walk of life. I've got my son to read it. I've read it. It's a joy to read and look at all of that sort of thing. And just speaking to you and looking at this journey that you're on at the moment is exciting. But looking at it and saying, right, these principles and how you can weave them into a business, it's just so important to look at. So I know there's going to be people here. I speak to people all the time who are fascinated by this subject. Ogo, if they want to reach out to you and find out a little bit more about your journey, about how you're helping people, about how you plan to take the business further forward, all of the above, tell them how they should get in touch with you. What's the best way to reach out and find out?
Okay, so my email is info@ogoade, OGOADE.com. Or you can just check out my website, Ogo Ade, and hit the contact and just drop me a line, drop me an email there, and I'll be sure to get back to you.
Fantastic. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I was introduced to you by a very good friend of mine, Ian Pickup, who raved about you, and I know he's similarly passionate to both of us about the lessons from sport to life in general. So thank you to Ian if you're watching for that introduction. I know I've sort of introduce you to a few more people along the line, and if people are watching this and know someone who could do with the help of Ogo, please do reach out to him as well. It's always a pleasure having a chat, and I really wish you the very best of luck with everything you're doing so far. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom today. It's been a great pleasure.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it, man. Thank you.
As did I, and thank you. I hope all of you did watching at home. We will see you very soon on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks ever so much.